But what I've noticed is that especially the higher up you go, there's a saying like whales don't jump through hoops. So I've seen that lead magnets work less and less the higher up you go. And so what I'm actually focused on getting is not them to just book a call immediately, not them to just opt into something, but actually for them to tell me like their challenges and pain points. Because I don't know about you guys, but I could do way more in a sales conversation if I know what they're dealing with than if they opt into some, book, which I have an Amazon bestseller, and people get it all the time, but I still get way more out of if I can actually start that conversation with them there and then transition that to a call. Because you want to essentially be a coach to them before they buy, because that is a big part of what they're buying. And so if you can be that for them earlier on, that helps a ton. And so your profile can have different things that start the right conversations with them, and that'll help a ton. Build what they want and then sell it back to them. So you're creating a course and then you're asking them what they want to see in it. And then you're just creating what they tell you, right? And so when I did that, I started putting it on lead magnets and stuff that I had on a site that was getting a ton of traffic and a ton of leads through that. And that's when I realized like, oh man, there's a big opportunity just in asking that, because that showed me like new lead magnets and other things to offer. So that principle just, carried on from that on.
If you want to build a legitimate, profitable online business without shiny objects, without the hypey gimmicks, and without the stress and overwhelm, if you want to make more money without having to be present online all day, every day, pumping out content that nobody sees and hustling DMs to generate leads and sales, then this is the place for you. Welcome to the Digital Trailblazer Podcast, your online business university, where you'll learn how ordinary people start from ground zero with no influence, no email list or audience to sell to, and no business or marketing experience, and go from working 9-to-5 jobs to building successful 6- and 7-figure online businesses and all the steps in between. Learn the strategies that worked and what didn't. Learn the mistakes that they made and how to avoid them, and then learn their plans for scaling their businesses and taking things to the next level. All so that you can build your business faster and easier and make more money without sacrificing the things that are important to you in your life. I'm your host, Leah Ray Getz, and with me is my husband, Todd. Now let's get to it with today's guest. Welcome. With us today is Nate Morse. Nate, go ahead and let our audience know what you're all about.
Yeah, so for the last 7 years, I have been helping coaches, consultants, and other experts use LinkedIn to not just get more clients, but get better clients through our Pinnacle methodology, which uses LinkedIn outreach and content in a very unique way.
So how did you get started with this?
So personally, I was an entrepreneur for a company before I started my own, which I think is the best route to go if you can get the opportunity, which I think it's a very hard opportunity to come by. So if you get it, totally take it. And so I was doing that, and I was cold calling to get businesses back then, which I was doing really well. But then I needed to have something that was a little bit more efficient and scalable than just calling businesses. So I landed on LinkedIn because it had the best targeting. It was already a business-like tone, and I could actually send out like a connection request with a message in it, which I couldn't do that on any other platform. So that's really the way that I ended up on using LinkedIn for growing businesses. I was using it for myself, and then when I branched out, then I went on my own, and that's why I help other people do.
So LinkedIn is not like, we have a presence on LinkedIn, but it's definitely not a specialty for us or something that we've spent a lot of time mastering or learning. So what's really working in the LinkedIn space these days?
Yeah, so right now, people are seeing content get a lot more engagement because around 2021, LinkedIn started focusing more on making it what I believe they were making it more of like a legitimate social media platform. And with ads and just whatnot that's on Facebook and other things, more people are coming there. And so the content, people are getting much more engagement. It's almost like the early days of, like TikTok. It's almost like the TikTok for B2B, where it's still in an early stage where the algorithm is still figuring things out. So you get much more bang for your buck in terms of reach. Now, we don't want to just stop there because we also need the right people in our list. So we need to have people that are relevant, ideally in the market, but relevant like prospects that are in your connection so that they can see that content, because otherwise you're hoping that it eventually gets to them, but it's not going to work nearly as well as if you add them directly and then the algorithm, they engage with it and then it goes out to more and more people. But we have noticed that when we do outreach in combination with it, so for example, people that are engaging in your content after you've added them before, now they're engaging with your content, they're like raising their hand in the buyer's journey. And so now you can actually communicate with them more to actually progress that journey. So instead of just making content and waiting for them to raise their hand in the front of the class and ask a question and go directly to you, we want to create a journey where we're joining along them in this narrative and we're being the guide and kind of making them the hero of their own journey. And so that involves using LinkedIn at a much deeper level than either just making content or just, shooting out a bunch of connection or a bunch of.
So for those who are not on LinkedIn at all, number one, like what does LinkedIn offer now for what types of content? Does it do shorts? Is it lives? Is it like what's available at this point of it to create on LinkedIn? And then what's working and break down like the frequency, what it should be made up of, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So content wise, and before we even get into the actual content, your profile is super important because people will look at it. Even if they see your post, they're going to go to your profile, just like all you guys just creep on everybody else, right? Like they do the same thing. In terms of content type, you have, your traditional short form posts that you can type up, your long form posts that you type up. They have articles, which are longer form. You can have a longer limit. And I like those because then you can escape the algorithm. So essentially people can subscribe to your newsletter, and then now you don't have to wait for the algorithm to feed them the next one. They automatically get a notification and email with the whole thing. So that's like the goal of where content should be driving, but a lot of people aren't focusing on that. So that's the written side. Now they also have videos, so you can do live videos. You can create an event, and the cool thing about that is when you go live, it's actually on your profile. So if someone's viewing your profile, they'll actually see the live video as the banner, so they can hop in there, they can join the events, they can do things like that. Another thing too is carousels. So it's basically like uploading a PDF with some different pages, and those get a lot of high engagement as well. You also have polls, so you can ask questions, and those, I see a lot of reach come from those. And you can use those all together. We have kind of a way of the frequency of using them together. So it might be like questions to see what people are interested in. Then that influences the post that you create, right? And so the frequency I pretty much stay on is about 2 posts a day. I've tried 3, but 3, I'll actually sometimes get people to unfollow me because they say that I fill up their whole news feed. And so that may not be best, but for exposure wise, I did test it, and it was, I got, 50% more reach when I went up by 50% more. So there is that at play inside of there. But yeah, two a day, 1 a day to start out, maybe 1 every weekday. And then if you were to really go with the basic, I do 1 on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Those are the biggest days. So I'd pick those days. If you only could do what's the bare minimum, which I think if you are just thinking about what's the bare minimum, you should not be running a business. You should go do something else. But if you are for some reason in that boat for whatever context in life happens to you, then yeah, 2 posts, 1 on Tuesday, 1 on Thursday. But ideally go to 2 or 3 a day.
So for this content, what type of stuff are you putting out there? Like, what are you posting about? Is this personal stuff? Is it education or business? Is it pitches? Well, I mean, or is it a mix of that stuff?
Great question. So I'm not big on the pitching. I kind of call it like pitch slapping. I don't think that we should be pitching in the messages or in posts directly. I think something should get to a further stage before you do that. Later on in the DMs, it's fine. But stories work really well. People connect really well with stories. So I've been seeing more and more of that happen. Video seems to do well as well, but that seems to be just something we're seeing everywhere, right? And then I've also noticed that because there is a difference between, let's say Facebook or LinkedIn in terms of what content will work. Some stuff that does great on LinkedIn will completely bomb on Facebook and vice versa. So it's a different platform. People are thinking different ways. But really focusing on not only just the stories for people to connect with you, but also what's tangible, legitimate, good advice that's maybe broken down into lists, stuff like that. People like more bite-size, helpful things. So a good combination of stories, of transformations and things you've learned and lessons, and then also lessons in terms of directly applicable things that they can use right now.
Okay. So do you ever do any quote lifestyle type posts or blogging or vlogging or whatever it is where people are just kind of posting about the day or the things that they ate or whatever? Is that type of content something that you'd put on LinkedIn or not?
There's going to be a fine line there. So on Facebook, that stuff's going to work great. On LinkedIn, it can, but for some people, it's a turnoff because they want the platform to be about business, so they don't want it to be that stuff. But I mean, I've seen people, almost like a bait and switch. A lot of people will create posts where they're talking about something in life, and then it shifts like, oh, and also this principle works in business, right? And I think that's a great way. But some people I've seen like get married and then be like, hey, here's what, getting married taught me about B2B sales, right? And I think that there are some angles that are maybe weird, like, I had to go to 2 funerals last week, right? I'm not going to come back and be like, here's what funerals taught me about business. Like, I don't think that's like going to be an appropriate post to make, so there is going to be a line in there. But I think at a deeper level, the question is more of like, what stage of the funnel are you building your content for, right? So if it's people at the very top that aren't very aware and they need more to know about like you, right? And like what you do, that's where I would be focusing more on having stuff that's going to connect with people at just a basic level, right? Because if they can use your services, just like when you go to a networking event, right? If all you do is talk about business, like people are going to be a little bit off-put by that, right? They want to have like that casual first handshake where it's just like, hey, how's your day? Stuff like that, right? So the top of funnel, you can make posts that will engage with people in that way, and that'll drive more engagement because you're basically, when you have a post that does well, you're priming the algorithm for the next post, right? So that's how some people will do it, is they'll put out one that's made for high engagement, and then they'll put out something that's more, middle or bottom of funnel.
Yeah. So as far as that goes then, so it sounds like this is maybe a strategy that might work better for some niches than others. Or for example, like if you were someone who works with overworked moms, right? Stay-at-home moms who are overworked and they're stressed out, and is LinkedIn a platform that you would go to find your audience to do this with? Or is this more for people who are like business coaches or something like that, or people who work with corporate CEOs and that type of an audience?
So, I mean, are there like overworked moms on LinkedIn is really the question, right? So it's mostly a professional network. There's a lot of people on there that have jobs, and a lot of them, and even more so today, right, are women. I think. I don't know the statistics are on that, but I think there's more women working now than maybe like 10 years ago even, right? So if they're on there, then yeah, that's really all it is like, are the people on there? That's all you need. That's all you need in it. And then can you find them, right? It might be easier or harder to find them on LinkedIn versus Facebook. Facebook, you might find groups specifically dedicated to their challenges, and you might be able to find the people easier.
So why don't you talk about that for a little bit? Explain how to find the right people on LinkedIn.
Yeah, so you can use, and there's a lot of really good filters, and there's other tools that are outside of LinkedIn that can help you as well, other databases. But yeah, you have like Sales Navigator, which gives you a lot more filters, or you have the basic one, the basic search. But yeah, Sales Navigator will give you a lot more data. So you can look at, demographics of, looking for a female, or however things go in that direction. And then you can go into like, what role do they have? Like, how long have they been there? Where are they located? Are they active recently? So things like that will help you find them much easier. So Sales Navigator is definitely worth it in that aspect, which is a question a lot of people get. Should I get Premium or Sales Navigator?
Okay. So for those, explain how the difference. Those are 2 different upsells essentially on LinkedIn.
So just the general search, the filters on there, that's like the free one, not really an upsell. And then if you get Sales Navigator, which I think is like $80 a month, I think I just looked at the records and it was like 87 or something. That's where you get all the extra filters. So if you can't find all the stuff you need in the free version, it might be worth, doing a trial if you haven't already, to see what are the filters in Sales Navigator.
And so on LinkedIn, everything is done through your one personal account, right? Like it's not like Facebook where you have a personal account and then a business account or a business profile. In LinkedIn, it's just you, and that's all there is, right?
No, there's business pages, there's company pages.
Okay,
that exist. Yeah, Leah probably has one.
Yeah, I do.
See, I didn't even know.
Digital Trailblazer has one.
So do you do all this work through your personal profile, or do you create a business page and do this with?
I don't do as much with the business pages. It's similar to Facebook in a couple of regards. Like when you make content and stuff, it doesn't really get any reach unless you pay for it. And so same thing on there. But really the personal connection side, like, what do you like content more from? Like a story from a person or a business, right? It's going to be more personal. And so even if I'm doing outreach and stuff, I definitely want to do it from me versus a business page.
Okay.
So I'm all about getting the right conversations with the right people. That's my main focus.
Right. Are there any limits on LinkedIn as far as how many connections you can have, or how many connections you can send out, or connection requests, and how many messages you can send out in a day?
Definitely. So on the free version, you can send 10 personalized connection requests a month, and then there isn't really a set limit for everyone on that. LinkedIn kind of changes it per person based on how long they've been there, how active they are. So it kind of ramps up as you get more and more active. But we go to about 100 to 200 connection requests a week. And then in terms of messaging, you can do 500 a week if you want.
So what would be a good starting daily method of operation for someone who's just looking to start making connections and eventually be bringing in clients for their coaching program through LinkedIn?
Yeah. So first thing would be do your target market research, look on LinkedIn, look at the groups that you're going after and see who is the absolute best market to focus on, how many people are there, so you can find the actual opportunities, because number one reason businesses fail is lack of market research. So doing the market research into LinkedIn and finding, okay, is the opportunity there for me first? How big is it? Because you might notice that you might take a step back and realize you have this big umbrella of people that you can go after, but there's actually going to be subgroups within those that might have more or less opportunity. And instead of being, because the next thing you're going to want to do is optimize your profile for that. And if you're trying to be relevant to everybody, you're not going to stand out against somebody else that's more relevant for that specific group. So finding that is the first step, then optimizing your profile so that it works with them, but not as a brochure or like a resume like everybody else is doing. You want to do it so that you actually have things in the profile that are relevant to stages of the buyer's journey, not just things that are relevant for that. Because you want to essentially be a coach to them before they buy, because that is a big part of what they're buying. And so if you can be that for them earlier on, that helps a ton. And so your profile can have different things that start the right conversations with them, and that'll help a ton. So after you have the foundation of the research and the profile done, then now you can start reaching out to people. So I'd be reaching out to 10 to 20 people a day, adding them to your connections list, and then making a post a day. And so at that point, you should have new people rolling in. Depending on your messaging, you might be able to get some calls from it, and then you'll have posts that they can see. But that would be where I would start off at the beginning, because even your posts, you might have people reaching out to you. I'll get people that will book calls, and I'll say, hey, what motivated you to get on this? They're like, oh, this one post that you made. They didn't engage in it. So that's one thing that's interesting on LinkedIn is people don't engage in the content as much. But yeah, that's where I would start out.
Does LinkedIn show you the reach and engagement numbers on your profile? Like, do you see how many people saw your post out of all your connections?
Yeah, I see, and it shows me who, and I can see who visited my profile.
Oh wow!
Because I'm going to reach out to them too, right?
Yeah, that would be really good information to have. Like that's. So do you use that information in any way to like do like more of a cold reach out? Like even if they didn't engage, but you saw that they were checking out the posts, they were checking out your profile, do you use that in any way?
Yeah. We people that engage with the content and visit the profile, I reach out to both of them.
And then on the back end of all this, like, are you in your content, like what's typically the call to action? Is it always just book a call, or do you like have free lead magnets that you offer with an opt-in? What are you doing to kind of move people on through your funnel?
Yeah. So, I mean, I have a testing framework. So I'm running 10 to 20 different campaigns, looking at different audiences, different testing, or different call to actions, different messaging. But what I've noticed is that especially the higher up you go, there's a saying like whales don't jump through hoops. So I've seen that lead magnets work less and less the higher up you go. And so what I'm actually focused on getting is not them to just book a call immediately, not them to just opt into something, but actually for them to tell me their challenges and pain points. Because I don't know about you guys, but I could do way more in a sales conversation if I know what they're dealing with than if they opt into some book, which I have an Amazon bestseller, and people get it all the time. But I still get way more out of if I can actually start that conversation with them there and then transition that to a call.
So you're just working with these people directly in the direct messenger.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what would that message sequence kind of look like as you're making outreach to people? Could you give an example or kind of a general flow of that?
Yeah, like even how do you break the ice? Because I'm sure a lot of people are like, well, I don't even know what I would say. And I think that's where you kind of get into a situation where a lot of people just do the pitch vomit, right? And they just write this big long block of text, and at the end it's, hey, let's book a call or something, right? And it's really awkward, and people just get ignored that way.
Yeah, it's like walking up to someone in a bar or wherever watering hole, and first thing you say is, here's all the reasons that we should get married, right?
Yeah.
Even if you guys are a good fit, probably not going to work, right? And even if it did work, that's probably not actually going to be a good fit long term. Yeah, so yeah, that would be the, what a lot of people are doing that doesn't work. But on the other side, I mean, like, so when we do research, like, we'll go and find people who are actually currently in the buyer's journey. So maybe we saw them on a website, maybe we saw them do something, maybe they engaged with like some competitors' content. We'll reference directly what they did, and then have something that's more along the lines of like being friends, or reach his hand out for virtual handshake, something like that, like asterisks around it, right? So things like that are more of that casual handshake, showing that you're just a cool person, but that why you found them. But that reason of that thing that they were doing, all reference that and continue to use that, and that'll be the initial anchor point that then will get them to tell me. Because like, let's say that they were engaging in some competitors' content that had to specifically do with what you were doing, and they were in the same same topic. So if we're referencing that, then we can essentially ask them from there, like, hey, since you engaged in this piece of content, I'll actually reference how I'm making content, right? And I want to know what topics they want to know around that, right? So then once they tell me that, that's their challenge or pain point, right? And so then I can either answer their question, or I can just say, hey, like, it would burn my fingers to type a response up to this. Like, I have some ideas. Are you free for a call, this or next week?
So it feels like not the pitch vomit that a lot of people do on LinkedIn, but it still has a lot more direct businessy tone than what people are typically doing in the Facebook space or in other social media platforms in their messengers.
Yeah. I mean, the stuff I get on Facebook is like pretty much just pitches. So it's just like VAs and people wanting to book appointments for me, probably doing the same thing. I don't know.
Yeah. I was going to say that that transition about asking, referencing the content that they engaged in, and then asking them for, okay, what other questions you have or something like that. That's very similar to like what we do in our Facebook group, where, when people join, we've got 3 questions that we ask them before we actually let them in. One of those is always, we create content in this group on a regular basis. What's the number one question you have that you would like us to answer? Something like that. But it's basically the same thing. We're asking, like, what's your biggest struggle in your business? What's the biggest problem?
Yeah. And what it does too is it builds the buyer's journey for you, and it tells you what content to create.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So you get to create their stuff. And where it came from, did you guys read Expert Secrets by Russell Brunson a long time ago, or no?
Yep. Yeah. I got that.
Yeah. So when that came out, there's a question in there where it's basically like, build what they want and then sell it back to them. So you're creating a course, and then you're asking them what they want to see in it, and then you're just creating what they tell you, right? And so when I did that, I started putting it on lead magnets and stuff that I had on a site that was getting a ton of traffic and a ton of leads through that. And that's when I realized, like, oh man, there's a big opportunity just in asking that, because that showed me like new lead magnets and other things to offer. So that principle just, carried on from then on.
So it sounds like you might be using some additional tools or resources to help you with finding the right people, like outside of LinkedIn. Can you kind of talk through that a little bit?
I mean, it depends. Like one tool that's good is Apollo. It has better search than LinkedIn,
Mm-hmm.
I would say. But I mean, part of this is also just manual.
Okay.
I have a team that goes out and does research. But yeah, there's other, search engines and AI tools and things that can all help you with that.
Okay. So you're literally talking about going to a competitor's page, seeing who's engaging on their content, and then messaging, reaching out to those people that are commenting or liking on a competitor's content.
Yeah. That's one angle. Yeah. But yeah, in principle, that gives you an idea. Yeah.
So you said you have a team that does this. Is your team working through your own personal profile, or do they have their own profiles that they're working on LinkedIn?
Both. A mix of both. Because some of the research stuff we don't want to use on profiles that are running, because you only get like a limited number of actions per day, according to LinkedIn. So you got to separate those.
And it's a little bit different from, I've heard, correct me if I'm wrong, that LinkedIn is fine with VAs and stuff helping you on your profile, then it doesn't go against their terms of service. Whereas like Facebook, you're always kind of dancing a little bit because it isn't allowed according to Facebook.
Yeah, so they're both the same. They both, LinkedIn doesn't allow you to have more than one profile, and it doesn't allow anyone or anything to manage your profile. So, yeah, so there's a line of where you get in trouble versus not. So it's kind of a gray area on that. But they know, like, if LinkedIn were to actually stop people from doing like automation and stuff, I think LinkedIn would like struggle. I think there's so many people doing it. I think that it would create an issue for them. So that's why I think that they're more of trying to manage it versus trying to like obliterate it.
Right. So are you using a VPN? Like, are your VAs using VPNs to log into your own account, or is they just log in from wherever they are?
Oh, I mean, so yeah, if they're doing the research side, then yeah, they're just going to log in. But in terms of sending like connection requests and stuff out, we have our own software for that.
Okay. What about paid ads? I know that you can do paid ads on LinkedIn. I haven't really heard of anybody really taking advantage of those, or the people that have kind of tested it out haven't really had a lot of success with it. Is that something that you use, or have you looked at that?
So I see a similar thing, and I think the reason is that LinkedIn as a platform is more for networking, so much so as like doom scrolling, right? And the higher up you go, the less time they doom scroll, right? So, but they still use it for networking. They still check messages, all that. That's why I think that the newsletters that go to their email along with getting messages, I think those are the two most important things.
Gotcha.
But yeah, that's what I see with it. It's much more expensive. And then it's more, I think it's more difficult to get them to engage because they're just not scrolling as much.
So we're making connections every day, putting out content at least Tuesdays and Thursdays, but optimally 2 to 3 times a day, using your the search tools, Search Navigator, that's what Sales Navigator, right?
Sales Navigator.
To actually find the right people to connect with, and then using a combination of getting the initial exposure through the outreach, but then leveraging your content to further nurture and get people raising their hand and moving them along the process towards a sale. Correct?
Yeah. I'd still, even when you reach out to them, I'd still have like a sequence after that still gets calls on its own because they might not see your content, like I was saying with the doom scrolling aspect.
So if you're sending out 10 to 20 connection requests per day, you're creating content daily, at the end of the week, like how many sales calls can you roughly expect to book on a weekly or monthly basis doing with that level of activity?
Yeah, that's such a hard question to answer because some people's businesses, like their brand and all that, and it doesn't, they're not there yet. So it's not going to convert. So that's the hard part, right? So it's basically once it's converting, what's the potential, right? And so, I mean, that we've seen people get like 2 to 10 clients a week once it's like fully running and going, right?
That's actual paying clients though.
Yeah. These are high ticket clients where they're, 10 to 100 grand for their projects because that's, who we mostly focus on. So, I mean, yeah, you can get it really going. But I mean, the majority of what I see is that people are getting like less than 20% for connection requests and probably like less than 10% for replies. Whereas when we have things fully locked in, a lot of times people are above, 50, 60, 70% for all of those metrics. So there's a huge difference. That's where when I went into the LinkedIn space and I was doing what was out there, I just take a step back and like reinvent the wheel on it because what was working was it was like 25% acceptance and 5% reply, and most of those were negative, right? And so now it's completely different. But like that might still be what they figure out in the beginning because that optimization process is key, right? All of this, if they go and do it, the optimization process still isn't there, So it's like, it's very difficult. But like, yeah, if you have things dialed in, somehow you're like already there, then yeah, I mean, I've had people get like their best clients ever within their first month.
Very cool. And I like the data behind it and understanding. And for people who are listening and getting, I mean, as marketers and as business owners, we get a little like juiced up whenever we hear about something that can work really well. And then they want to go out and try it and have to realize that you have to continue to optimize and reiterate or make new iterations of everything as you're going to get better and better to get to the level of results that we're talking about, right?
Yeah. And we're running lots of accounts, right? So, and then we've run them for years, right? So when we're working with someone, we usually know like what to test next. And we'll have like, a 6-month, growth roadmap of here's what we're going to test to actually dial everything in.
That's awesome.
So yeah, the data. So yeah, the data in the where are the opportunities and where's the low-hanging fruit, and then the data on the optimization side. So
if people want to learn more about you and your services and what you do with LinkedIn, where should they check you out?
Yeah, you can just go to natemorse.com, NATEMORSE. I have my book and stuff for free on there. You can also book calls and get free profile audit.
That sounds awesome. I love what you're doing. I love how systematized it is. And I think this is a really good just walkthrough of what's currently working on LinkedIn. So we really appreciate you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on.
You've been listening to the Digital Trailblazer podcast. For show notes and information about today's guest, head to digitaltrailblazer.com. Now, if you love this episode, if you got some value, make sure you leave us a review and subscribe. And be sure to share this episode with anyone you know who could use help to build their business. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.